would you please welcome to the stage Tinsel Edwards.
Thank you.
Tinsel's having a baby. I don't know if anybody
Hopefully I won't
noticed
have
that.
a baby today.
God, that would be some good filming. Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. A bit nervous, but I'm trying not to let that overtake.
No, it's fine. You guys are nice, aren't you? See.
I'm trying to imagine we're all in a pub.
Well, we should have got some more drinks up here, but it is Sunday and you are pregnant. So anyway, so we are going to go through some slides. I guess before we do so, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what inspires you, where your influence is coming from.
So I'm an artist based in East London. Got my studio in Homerton. A lot of my work can be described as political. There's a lot of social commentary in it. But it's also got a strong autobiographical narrative. That's because I think it's really important to make work about things that affect me personally. I think that I can be more genuine and more honest and more authentic if I'm making work about things that affect my own life, my family's life, my friends around me. Got lots of different influences. Maybe we should look at some slides and that can...
Yeah, sure, you got the clicker there.
Hopefully this will work. So yeah, I'll just run through a couple at the beginning, which shows a variety of my works. So this is the piece the body of work that I made last year.
And is some of that this stuff from downstairs?
Yeah,
is it all
so
the
it's
same?
intermixed with existing signs, but I'll talk a bit more about that later. This is a piece called The Bank of Tinsel and Twinkle. I often collaborate with a friend called Twinkle. I'll tell you a bit more about that later, maybe.
There's definitely some questions in there that need to be asked.
This is quite an old piece from 2008, and I see that now as where the housing workers come from. I made it just after I was looking for a flat and realising how expensive it is to live in London and how it's virtually impossible to survive here now with how much it costs to rent.
Just do me a favour, put your hand up if you live in London. Okay. Keep your hand up if you think the rent is ridiculous here. Yep. Cool. So I'm sure this is going to resonate.
Yeah, so I've just put together a mixture of slides of different things. These are some of my older pieces. What shall I rest it on? Okay, I'll keep it on that one. A lot of my work, I'll go through a couple of themes that I've looked upon. So inequality is a big theme, consumerism, capitalism. I also used to make a lot of work about the art establishment, but also revolution and responsibility is a big theme, and optimism as well. I think it's really important to keep hope and optimism. We've heard that said a couple of times already this morning. This piece is just thinking about the idea that we all have an influence, even if it's a tiny influence on the little bit around us, our little niche, that we can actually make a difference. So just the idea that a revolution starts within your heart. Maybe it's a bit cheesy, but...
It's nice, though.
What else? So, yeah, I'll just move forward again. So one of the biggest influences in my work has been punk. Since my early 20s, I've always been very inspired by it. Even at college, I used to just go and hide away in the library and find all this amazing old footage of punk gigs and pored over the album covers and found the fanzine Sniffing Glue. And it's not necessarily just about the music, it's about the whole attitude of punk. How it was really to do with the energy and the passion and the belief. And it was an anti-consumerist thing, it was anti-establishment, and it's the energy of it that inspires me, I think, and that continues into my work today.
Are you still very much a punker?
I used to be in a band as well, actually.
Tell us more about that.
That was for 7 years.
What were you called?
the Fairies band, and
Was Twinkle in
Twinkle
the
was,
first
Twinkle was in it, yeah. We were around for 7 years, and we all wore wings, and we granted people wishes. We had these like wish tokens that we'd give out to people in the streets, and then obviously we performed as well. But I think that it had a message as well, that there's always kind of a message in my work. I'm not interested in making anything that's just beautiful or just amazing. It has to have a point to it, and that point has to come from my heart, really, and has to be very genuine. I'm really always concerned with being honest and authentic.
Is that what you think? I mean, Louis was very much touching on this earlier, you know, how to be a good storyteller. Do you think it just lies in that authenticity of what your message is, rather than, I guess, the focus on the aesthetic?
Definitely. I mean, there's so many issues and injustices in the world, and they're all so important. But the ones that I feel like I can fight or talk about are the ones that come into my own life, I think. And I think if I make work about those things, it will have more resonance with people.
Yeah, definitely.
So just move on again. So, yeah, I was going to talk about the two areas in my practice that sometimes I feel like they're fighting. There's a strong element of using text, but there's also a strong love of paint. So I kind of have these two bits in my head, which I kind of dip in and out of for different parts of my artwork. So there's like typography and different fonts and canal boats and sign writing. Traditional sign writing is a massive influence. And then artists, I've heard Jenny Holzer mentioned quite a few times. I'm really influenced by her, and Barbara Kruger. Bob and Roberta Smith is a big influence as well.
Do you think sign writing is a kind of lost art? I mean, is it making a resurgence in any way?
Definitely. It seems to be becoming more fashionable, actually.
It's coming up with craft beers and everything like that,
yeah.
you know?
It's the skill and the craftsmanship involved, I think, and people are kind of mourning that in a way, and that's why people are pleased to see that back again.
I guess because you're so bombarded constantly with
machine-created imagery. So this is a couple of examples which are quite old pieces. I went through a phase of finding bits of wood or finding objects in the streets or in car boot sales and things, and putting slogans on them or messages, and just playing around with different fonts. I did use this cut-out letters thing for quite a while. Again, it references back to the punk aesthetic, and also it's like a sort of ransom note.
Yeah, I was about to say, it does feel like you were sort of threatening someone.
Yeah.
The kids in the trunk.
My son always asks me what's behind that door, so I just always say it's opportunity.
But really, what is behind the door?
I don't know yet, really. This is a recent piece that I made last year. I've started using the Signwriters one-shot paints, which I absolutely love, and trying to develop my skills as a sign writer, really. So it's a bit tidier than some of my previous pieces. And just, commenting about the fact that such a high percentage of our society is profit-driven. There's massive corporations not paying their taxes, all of that stuff, and just wanting to see a bit more love in the world rather than the want to make money. But afterwards, I kept thinking, I'm not sure if that piece is complete, so I titled it Idealistic, Naive and Hopeful, because maybe I am a bit idealistic and maybe I'm a bit naive, but I think it's really important to have hope and to have optimism.
I think that's certainly kind of like a resonating theme, a recurring theme, throughout a lot of these talks, and I know we're going to hear some more of that later on. And I think it's okay to be against things, but it's nice to see people for something and pushing that side of things.
Yeah.
So how do you know when something's done? You said you weren't sure if it was finished. So I mean, this is always a question for artists. How do you know when to call it? What is there like a point for you?
I always know when something's not done, even though I will have finished it how I seen it in my head. So that was what I visualised. But then when it was supposedly complete, I thought there's something missing, and it was that title that kind of gives it another dimension or angle, I suppose. So this is a slide I just put together a few painting influences. Painting is a massive love of mine, and it's kind of this dichotomy, like this dilemma between the text art and the wanting to be really bold and graphic and strong and direct, but also loving the medium of paint and wanting to explore that and wanting to improve my skills as a painter, hone my skills really. And there's a massive tradition of painting that carries so much weight with it. So yeah, I'm influenced by Manet and Goya and the Impressionists.
What was your background then? Did you do the institutions? Did you go through the ranks of art schools and things like that, or were you more off the grid in a punk world?
Kind of half and half, I suppose. I always wanted to be an artist, and I did A-level, went on to Art Foundation, and then went on to Art College at Goldsmiths, and always wanted to be a painter, like someone who goes to their studio every day and paints and just has so much time to experiment and become this amazing painter. But even at college, I quickly kind of stopped doing that, and then the band came along and I became distracted by that, but maybe in a good way. But it's this thing inside of me that's always like niggling away that I want to do that. But I was going to say as well, I think the issues that I comment on in my work often require more of an immediate response. So like the housing issues that I'll go on to talk about, I haven't got the time to spend 10 years making the most amazing painting, because what's happening is happening now, and I feel often that I have to make my work much more direct, really. So
it's definitely a time for that direct action. You know, I'm not saying we go out and start burning down government, but I mean we could, but maybe not quite that direct. But yeah, it is an issue that's massively affecting people.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, is there any artists in here? I know we've got a couple. Put your hand up if you're an artist. Are you living in London? You know, it's where? Okay, so but it's just as expensive. You know, if you're coming out of Goldsmiths and you want to exist in London and create in a space like this, it's, you know, there's not much support there. Do you have a response to this this crisis?
Well, it started more definitely in 2012, and there's some examples on this slide of my first responses to it. My personal experience looking for flats, and then when I had my little boy, I was a single parent for 4 years. Finding a flat just on my salary was virtually impossible, and I did actually have to claim housing benefit. And then realising that housing benefit was actually going into the landlord's pocket was quite a strange thing. But then seeing the rents increase more and more and more, and talking to friends who eventually have become priced out of London. My best friend, Twinkle, is now living in Margate.
Of course she's living in Margate.
Yeah, lots of artists are fleeing to Margate. But there just doesn't seem to be anything from above that's trying to take control of this situation or prevent it from happening. I think a good idea might be to introduce some rent controls.
Yeah, I mean they do that in Berlin, don't they? And I don't know. I think it seems to work. I mean, can't quote on it from a personal point of view, but it seems to help. But I don't, you know, I think maybe just slightly slows it down a little bit. But yeah, I mean, we definitely, I'm sure many people in this city would agree that we need some kind of something put in place.
Yeah,
to
we should
stop
be
this.
protecting our artistic communities, but it's not just the artistic communities; it's everyone. And there just doesn't seem to be an end to it at the moment. And I think the idea of social housing is a really good one. Why aren't we putting more money into creating more social housing? But the housing situation is so complex because there's like the social cleansing that's gone on in estates like the Carpenters estate in East London, when the Olympics were going to happen, a whole estate was kind of decanted off to places like Milton Keynes.
Where was Russell Brand for that one, then?
Yeah. So, but there's a really interesting campaign that came off the back of that, the Focus E15 Mums.
Which you did go on and do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's loads, and the homelessness is on the rise. Just so many different aspects to it. Not only that I'm struggling to pay my rent, there's just so many different parts to it. But going back to the work that I started making, it started from looking in estate agents' windows and just being fascinated by their adverts, where it's like quite often a really horrible, like grim-looking interior, but then the language describing it, they're trying to sell it, so it's like saying beautiful, or stunning, or contemporary, and then what you're looking at is completely the opposite. And then you see the price, and you think, but if you add that up, if that's the weekly price, you add that up to a month, and then how are people going to pay that? It just seems that landlords are in a position of power because there's so much demand and pressure on housing that they can just keep increasing. So these were little kind of sketchy paintings inspired by these images in the windows.
Yeah, I mean, you just need to like look on the internet and you just see the constant bombardment of like, you know, what the hell is this? This is £500,000 for, you know, the kitchen's next to the bathroom. Well, the kitchen,
Yeah.
you know, the tap is next to the bathroom. You've got your bed there, and
Yeah.
it's, you know, it's
We've
crazy.
seen like an increasing thing of like viral ads that go viral that are like the most ridiculous thing. Like there was a flat in King's Cross. It was 750 quid a month or something, and it was a bed and a wardrobe that you couldn't even open the door of, and a tiny little kitchen unit. It was tiny. But I'm actually making a series of paintings inspired by those adverts. There was a shed in a living room that was rented out in Bethnal Green. I think people are so shocked by it.
I saw that one, actually. Yeah, I did see that
they're
one.
just shared so many times online.
You sort of start becoming numb to it. You know, it's like we've
Yeah.
already hit. It just can't get more ridiculous
Yeah.
than this. I mean, the rest of the country is, you know, straight up laughing at us.
Yeah.
You know, back up in Scotland, it's like you pay what?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we are thinking of moving to Scotland at some point.
I think everyone's thinking
Yeah.
of moving to Scotland after Brexit.
Yeah. So I've just jumped from housing to this slide, but that will let me talk about my collaborations with my friend Twinkle. I think collaborating is a really important part of my artwork. It's a really good way of sharing ideas or bouncing off another person and opening up to new ways of thinking or working. We make quite a few, we call them public art stunts. So this was when we dressed as traffic wardens, just around the time that the recession hit, actually, in 2009 this was. And we fined 500 cars across the city. So we got the real parking ticket.
You fined them?
Yeah.
Is that how you paid your rent?
But we fined them with a present, which was some free artwork. So, yeah, it was just to point out that I suppose recessions can be really negative, but they do have positive outcomes as well. They can have positive outcomes. I'll see if I've got another...
Did you get any sort of strange reactions from that?
In one place in Dalston, we just put one on a car, and this man ran out of his house, like eating a bit of toast and going, "Stop, stop, what have you done?" Because people actually believed we were real traffic wardens.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but...
Well, you just see it. I mean, generally, other people wouldn't be doing anything to your car sort of dressed up as a traffic warden, so you have no reason to believe that it wasn't a traffic warden.
But the hats were just, like, bought on Amazon. They weren't really, like, proper traffic warden hats, but...
They're at hen-dos all over the country, those hats.
This is another one we did where we kidnapped a banker around the whole time when the bankers were not paying.
You actually kidnapped them?
Kind of,
This
yeah.
is where your ransom note practicing came in handy.
Kind of actually kidnapped a banker. And then we held him to ransom in a gallery space for a night. But he was allowed to go to the toilet, so that was okay.
Jesus.
And then...
I've seen a whole new dimension to you now.
This came about because of the banker kidnap, that we decided to actually create our own bank. And so we created our own banknotes, and we went round with the bank to various places. We took it down Ridley Market in Dalston, and we also had it in Vienna, actually, to coincide with a show we did there. But the bank became about sharing, and it was like looking at the concept of money and what it is, really, and what it means to people. But these banknotes, we'd hand them out to people and ask them to share a thought that they had about money. So it became a sharing, like an exchange of thought, really, rather than a currency. Well, thought was the currency, I suppose. Yeah.
Did you collect them then, or did they just go out into the ether, the notes, when somebody had written down their thoughts?
So yeah, we collected them and built up a display of them, and then we've got all pictures of them.
Amazing.
And this is when we set up a revolution laundrette. So we asked people what kind of revolution they'd like to see. So we were like traditional laundrette ladies.
What kind of responses did you get from that? What kind of revolution do people want to see?
Oh, I can't remember now. There was loads of things all written down again. Personal revolutions, like changes that people wanted to see in their own lives, or more political things, like such a big variety. So I'm just going to say about all of those art stunts is that I see those as a different way of communicating with people. Both me and Twinkle paint separately. Sometimes I feel like the need to go out there and actually interact with the public rather than a painting just being hung on the wall of a gallery. I think that kind of interaction, well, it's a different kind of interaction. It could be more powerful.
Well, it's a much wider demographic as well.
Yeah,
get. You know, the average person isn't just going to walk into a gallery to go and experience that moment. And if you arrest someone in the street, I mean, actually, literally, you know, you are kind of almost forcing them to engage with you, to react in some way. So
And actually the conversations that you end up having with people are really interesting and so diverse. I think when you're standing in a gallery with a painting next to you, there's more sort of presumption, I suppose, about what kind of conversation that you can enter into. But this is an image from a show I curated. I'm just going to talk a bit, after talking about collaboration, about the idea of the collective or the group, that I think working with people is a really good way to strengthen a message and to share. Like we were hearing so much about stories from Louis this morning, about sharing stories with each other. It's a really powerful thing to create discussion and debate. So this exhibition was called The Pour Door, and I had 11 artists. I did it as an open call, so that I selected from the open call, and they're all people that make work in response to housing. So it's quite nice for me to find other people making work on a similar theme, and then when the show was put together, it became a kind of a stronger message with lots of different angles within it. So
yeah, there's definitely strength in that, and like we were saying, you know, because of course so many people are being affected by it, it's nice to see, you know, the different perspectives on how to approach that issue, and how to, I guess, eventually come closer to some kind of response from it. You know?
So, yeah, this is just another one of my sketches that are inspired by the images in estate agents' windows, and it comes onto this, which was, I finished this actually this year. I kind of narrowed it down to three different elements in the composition, because there were things that I kept seeing within the images in the estate agent's window, and it kind of reduces it down to the basics, really, the basics of life. And thinking about the prison cell as well, as a way of existing where you only have the very basic things. Light bulbs kept appearing in the work. Initially, I kept thinking about them as like a symbol of poverty, that there's no lampshade, you just got the bare light bulb. But I also think of it as a symbol of hope within these paintings as well, that kind of light source is that symbol of optimism, of a way out of the situation that we're in.
Is there any estate agents in here today? Anyone? Of course you wouldn't put up your hand. No, thought I'd give that a try.
So yeah, I'll talk about this work now, I guess. Through all of those paintings that I'd made, I kept having stories shared with me, going back to the story thing, and I was collecting them in my mind. Every time you meet up with friends, you hear another thing about this person's rent's been raised, or this person's had to leave the area, those kind of things. And I was storing them all mentally, and I kept thinking, how can I capture these stories or show them back to people? Because it's those true stories, real life experiences, that are like the backbone of what's going on in a way. It's different to the things that you read in the newspapers. They're like the real stories. At the same time as that, I'd seen estate agent signs are just like everywhere in London. And so I decided to take them and use them as use their language to tell the real stories back. So just see if there's any more images.
So are these actual signs, or are these signs that you've completely created from scratch? Are these ones that you've nicked out of people's gardens?
Initially, I was trying to create them from scratch. So the material that they use is this like white plasticky stuff called Corex. So I ordered a load of that, and I was thinking, oh my God, this is really expensive. So it was kind of like from necessity that I thought, right, actually, I'll just go and take the signs that I'd found in the bushes. And yeah.
In their garden as they're trying to sell their place.
But what I found out is that legally, estate agents are only allowed them there for 2 weeks after the sale or the rent has happened. And on the street where I lived, I'd see a sign saying for rent, like it was there for about a year. But then you know that in London, a property can rent within a day. So it is, they should be taken away, really. So I thought, in a way, I was doing people a favour.
You're doing a service.
Yeah.
Nice. That is a good spin. That is a good spin on that. That's all right.
And at first I thought, well, the best way to make this work is to make them look really, really slick, and to make them look exactly like estate agent signs, so that when you see it in the street, that you'd just be like, oh, is this real or not? But then when I'd created them like that, I thought, actually, I think they need a more kind of human element to it, a more kind of guerrilla feel to it. So, because it is a human thing, and it's quite an emotive subject, that the actual hand painting and making it look quite childlike and quite naive worked better for the work, I think.
Did that just kind of generate more of a reaction, and people were like more inclined to stop and look at it because they knew automatically that there was something different to it? Or
maybe, yeah. I mean, I haven't really heard people's response, because I didn't ever show the ones that were just completely slick. I quickly painted over them. But I think that's how it would work. Just going back to light bulbs again, because I do like light bulbs. That one on the right, I've taken a symbol from Picasso's Guernica, which is in the top of the painting, and I just call it the light bulb eye. In the Guernica painting, it's like a symbol of hope. So I took that and adapted it for these signs as a symbol of hope in them as well. So that's them all mixed up with real signs.
now you've got to kind of pick out which ones are yours and which ones aren't.
When I made all this work, because I made it for Dismaland, because I was asked to participate in that, and I'd had the idea anyway, but I thought, well, this is a good opportunity to like make this whole body of work. But after that, I was so knackered that I just had to hide it away in the studio for months, and this is actually the first time that I've shown it again. But what I want to do with it is take them back out into the streets, because I think then it completes the circle. And I want to see what people's reactions will be when they're back in the environment where I found them. So
how are you going to kind of monitor the reactions?
I don't know, really. I think it was really interesting hearing Robert's talk and how all of that stuff that's happened online. I don't know, maybe some stuff might get posted
hide in the
online.
bushes with a camera.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
So I guess, how did all the Dismaland stuff come out? I mean, that must have been, was it kind of like just one day you get an email, it's like, hey, do you want to be in this little show?
Yeah, it was in like March of that year, and said, do you want to be in it? And couldn't tell me any information about it really. And I thought, oh, well, that's really exciting. Okay then. And I just proposed this idea, which he liked, and then I thought, well, I'll get on with it. And it was an incredible experience. The energy at that exhibition, so many different artists talking about really important issues. It really had sort of an energy and an atmosphere.
There was definitely an energy there. How was it? Did you get much time to spend in the sort of the pre-production there? I mean, I obviously don't want to spend too much time, but it's,
yeah.
we're getting a first-hand account of Dismaland, one of the biggest exhibitions we'll see here for a while. So I mean, what was the kind of the pre-production like? Was it a nice atmosphere? Was there a lot of camaraderie, and was the big man
Well, it was
there?
also hidden.
Yeah.
But, the only thing I had was some email correspondence, really. So I wasn't there at the setup. I didn't even know where it was going to be or what it was going to look like. It was like, I didn't even know where I had to drive to. It was the day before. I just emailed and said, where am I actually meant to be going? And so then, arriving to this place and just seeing this incredible thing. It was a really incredible experience. But I don't know. I met a few of the artists actually at the opening, but beforehand it was just so shrouded in secrecy, really. So it was quite a different experience for setting up an exhibition.
I know that some of the materials got sent down to the jungle at Galerie. Did they take any of your signs down?
No, they didn't in the end. They could have used the 2x1 wood, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, priced out sign next to it.
But luckily it means I've still got them and I can put them around in the streets. And I'd like to take them to quite sort of prominent places in London that have, like, I went and took a photo of one in Elephant and Castle. The Haygate estate is another council estate that's kind of been decanted, and there's all this regeneration going on, but people are being priced out who have lived there for years. So I took a sign there. But I want to kind of plot a little map of London and take them to these strategic points that have...
You'll need a lot of signs.
Yeah,
You'll need a lot of signs, because it's a large percentage of the city. I mean, where do you see people kind of moving in to? Do you think I mean, it must, all this kind of idea of people, being priced out of London, in a weird way, it's kind of good for the rest of the country. I mean,
Definitely.
Sheffield, Margate, people are moving to these places, and I guess that's...
I think that is a really positive thing. Leeds and Manchester and Glasgow. But I just feel quite sad for London, imagining what it will be in 10 years' time. Will it just be all about finance? And will it be a really sanitised place? What's so exciting about London is, how much cultural stuff is going on here. Yeah, and that grassroots thing will be destroyed, I think, if it's not protected somehow.
Do you have faith in Sadiq?
I do, actually. Yeah,
Okay,
I think it's a bit of hope there.
He's our light bulb at the moment, is he?
Yeah, I think so.
That's about all we got. It's about it. Everything else is shit. So we'll have to we'll pin it all on him, and we'll hope.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, I don't know what else to say, really. I'd put a question at the end, like, can art have real, genuine impact on social change? Quite a few people have always asked me that. I think what art can do is open up a debate and a discussion and highlight an issue. That thing of sharing stories is so important, and sharing it in a visual way can be very powerful. I think it's a very different arena to, say, the political rhetoric, which obviously has an agenda, and the media, which quite often has an agenda. Political artwork is ultimately an expression, an emotional expression, but hopefully it's something that can connect with other people can connect with what you're talking about. So
perfect. Well, look, that's a great place to end it. Ladies and gentlemen, Tinsel Edwards. So